At this time, I'll call the January 2nd, 2024 County Council meeting to order. I want to welcome all my colleagues here tonight, management, staff, and all of our public who came to join us tonight. This is our first meeting of 2024. We're excited to start this new year out. York County is the best place to live, work, and play as far as I'm concerned, and I'm excited about what 2024 holds for us. At this time, I'll recognize Allison Love from District 2, who will lead us in invocation and pledge of allegiance. Thank you.
Lord, whether we leave behind a year of joy or of trials and difficulties, we pause to give thanks. Thank you for being with us every day of every year. Thank you for making all things new and for giving us the grace of fresh starts and new beginnings. Remind us of your presence in the days to come, even when we feel pushed and rushed by busyness. Be glorified in our lives this year. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have any oath of office or appearances tonight. Do we have anyone signing up for the public forum? All right, we don't have anyone who's signed up for the public forum. Do we have a motion on consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to our first public hearing item. Item number 1, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-23, tax map number 692-00-00042 and 074, a zoning request to rezone from UD to LI, a 2.5 acre portion of 2 parcels in District 5. Mr. Buono.
Yes, ma'am. So this application is to rezone from UD to LI just off of Anderson Road. It does include 2 parcels and a 2.5 acre portion across those 2 parcels that's depicted in the hatched area on the screen here. The purpose for the rezoning is the applicant proposes a recombination for a future expansion of the existing vehicle repair business that's on a 3rd parcel directly adjacent to these 2. So here is that proposed recombination. They would like to include the 2 yellow highlighted portions to that existing vehicle repair business on that 3rd parcel. So here again is that hatched area that's to be rezoned. So you have the zoning district, UD. There is that other parcel that is LI, so they're looking to combine. So you'd have 1 larger LI parcel, and the 2 remainder parcels would still be UD. The future land use map calls for this area to be single-family residential, and it does have a neighborhood center node on top of it. So that does make this request inconsistent with the comp plan and the future land use map. However, the proposal is for an expansion of an existing business. It's not a newly proposed one. There are other light industrial uses that are in the vicinity, and it's located on a principal arterial, and it is separated from existing residential uses. Therefore, staff recommends conditional approval. And by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends conditional approval. And that's the standard condition that the property must be subdivided so that no more than 1 zoning district is applied to each parcel.
Jonathan, did the applicant share with you what they want to do on the property? Because this, I mean, it's typically, it's on Anderson, but it's actually primarily fronted on Leslie and the side road, which is more neighborhood. Did they explain to you what the current business is and what their expanded use is proposed to be?
So they have a vehicle repair service business there. I've not been told what the specific expansion proposal is, other than it is to include that business.
Is the has the applicant put together any idea of what they are planning for once they rezone this?
If they have, I have not seen it.
Okay.
But they would need to submit a site plan and go through the site review process once they have an idea of what they want to do for expansion.
So If this moves from UD to light industrial, can you tell me what are the additional uses that light industrial allows that UD doesn't currently?
That would take some time to go through the zoning table. There are dozens of uses that are allowed in each district, and there's some overlap there. The reason that they're requesting to go out of UD to LI is the LI would allow the vehicle repair that's not allowed in UD.
Aren't they, but they're currently doing vehicle repair?
So if you look at the screen here, that area in purple is the location of the existing business, and the shaded area in the gray is the proposed rezoning area that they are proposing to recombine and add that to the purple area so they can expand that existing business.
And what's their access point?
That would be on Anderson.
Anderson is where you drive into the property?
Yes, ma'am, off of 21 there, yep.
If you could put together a list, because I know one of the concerns that I've already gotten a couple of folks reaching out asking, obviously if this gentleman, and I'm a big proponent of allowing folks to continue to do their business on the property, but the concern is that once you go from UD to LI, it really opens up all of these other uses, including trucking operations. It's the most onerous, I guess, use that we have that allows for just about anything. And so if you could prepare kind of a list so that we can understand what exactly that opens it up to. If it's not limited by deed restriction, I would appreciate that.
I can do that, yes.
Are there any other questions before we open this up for public hearing?
Yeah, I've got one quick question. So on this property, and I may have missed it when you commented on it, are they putting in or building another building to help support working inside on this property? Or are they using this just?
I'm not aware of the specific proposal, other than they would like to add these two portions of property to the existing business parcel so that they can have an expansion area. I'm not aware of what the proposed expansion is
So,
at this time.
okay, so they haven't come with any requests as far as what they're looking to build on it
Correct.
at this point? Okay. All right, thank you.
Jonathan, on that note, and I'd ask that question too, have they indicated a willingness to deed restrict it, to keep it limited to a use so as to avoid some of the concerns that the surroundings, since this is more of a neighborhood, commercial, not,
That's
industrial.
that's not a conversation staff has had with the
Okay.
applicant.
thank you. Any other questions before?
I'm just curious, what is the red outline?
So the red line there is the neighborhood center node.
Okay.
So that's kind of an overlay node on top of the single-family residential designation. So it would be both for the future land use map.
Any other questions? All right, we'll open up the public hearing. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak against this request, if you'll come forward and give your name and address.
Hi, I'm Jessica Mueller, and I live at 3320 Leslie Highway, which is directly across this on Leslie Road. I am against it, mostly because I just have questions, also like what further expansion would be there? Is there another entrance? Because if they own all that land kind of around the Leslie side, will there be another entrance or exit? How much bigger will it get? It's just not like, it is a neighborhood, there's houses, there's a small little development where we live off of, so it's just not something I'm looking forward to seeing more. I understand like it's an existing business and that the main entrance, from what I understand, is on Anderson, but I'm just have questions, so I would like to hear more of like what you've already asked.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Please come forward. If you'll give your name and address.
I'm the applicant for the purchase of the land from Mr. Whitesville, Wesley Page. All we're looking to do is purchase the land to increase our parking lot. Potentially, if business allowed, we would want to build another building or add an addition on to the one we have. But right now, the main reason is just to get the piece of land so that if we are able to expand in the future, we would have that available, and we're just out of parking lot space, so when we get shipments on 18-wheelers and things of that nature, you have to move everything to get them turned around. So that's the immediate. As far as her concern, our land goes from South Anderson Road to the land we're looking to purchase to the right-of-way to the power line. It has nothing to do with Leslie. We're all on this side of the power line and South Anderson Road.
Thank you, sir.
So I don't know if y'all have any other questions for me about it.
Yeah. What are y'all working on? I know
we
what
race.
Wrightsville does, but what are y'all working on?
We build race cars and sell racing
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Yes, sir.
I think there may be some additional questions. We typically don't engage with we listen to the public hearing on this one. And this, so folks understand, this requires 3 readings, and the first starts with the public hearing. So there will be 2 additional readings after this.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this request? Do we have a motion to close?
Motion close.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion
Motion to approve. Second.
with the conditions noted by staff?
With the conditions noted by staff.
All right, a motion and a second.
Second.
This is my district. I do have some concerns, but I always typically allow first reading to move forward to see if there's some things that can be worked out with the community. And I will say the thing that bothers me the most, and this is something that I ran on, it's something that I try to be very consistent on, is even staff has noted that the requested rezoning is not consistent with the future land use map. And I think that the rationalization from that is that there's an existing business, and so maybe what's being requested is something that's a lot smaller than what it could be. But I think the concern that I have is that we be consistent. I think that the applicant ought to consider some deed restrictions if all that they're requesting is basically to have some additional land to continue doing what they're already doing. Because the fallback is, once it's rezoned to light industrial, it basically is open to a whole host of things that is not necessarily compatible with, I mean, it could be a full-blown trucking operation, which has impacts with how the traffic flows in that area, the road impacts, and so I think that having some dialogue with your neighbors and following up with what your intentions are and maybe tailoring it, I would like to see the applicant consider that, and I'll be happy to. You're in my district. That's why I'm doing a lot of the talking right now, is I'd like to have that opportunity to talk with you, and let's talk with the residents and see if we can't come to something that that everybody feels good with. As to first reading, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, first reading passes. Move now to item number 2, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 23-43, tax map number 670-00000018, to rezone from UD to RMX 10.323 acre parcel in District 4. Mr. Buono.
Yes, this request is on Rock Grove Avenue. So you can see the existing lot here. It's about a third of an acre. There was a home there previously. It was destroyed by fire. However, it was more than 180 days ago. And because it is located in the UD district, UD no longer allows residential as a use. So therefore, they would need to request a residential district in order to construct a single-family home to replace the one that was destroyed by fire. So staff recommends approval. The request is inconsistent with the future land use map, and that's because it's designated as municipal infill, and that defers to the municipal plan in that area. Rock Hill's plan calls for interstate employment. However, this is an existing neighborhood, and it does support other comp plan goals. The comp plan is more than just the map. There are text elements there as well. So it supports the housing goal, H3, to preserve and protect existing neighborhoods, which is here. And it also supports rezoning requests that are compatible with the character of the surrounding residential communities. Clearly, that's here as well. And you can see there's kind of a mix of UD and residential single-family, 30 located in this area. When the UD project ran through a couple of years ago, some of these properties were rezoned to a residential district. That's why you've kind of got that hatch there, but they're all single-family properties. So therefore, staff recommends approval, and by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have any questions for staff before we open up public hearing?
Jonathan, it's going down to RMX 10 because of the size of the lot, is that right?
That's correct.
That's the only thing that it would qualify for?
Correct.
All right, is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to public hearing item number 3, rezoning action, hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-45, tax map number 751000002, to rezone from RSF 40 to RUD, 71.812 acre portion of a 76.962 acre parcel in District 5. Mr. Buona.
Yes, this request is on Vinson Road, and it's to rezone a majority of the property here from RSF 40 to RUD. And the purpose here is to allow a recombination of the parcels because there's some split zoning. So I'll go to the zoning page here. So you can see the parcel is outlined in red there. And towards the south, you can see there's a portion of it that's currently zoned RUD, but the majority is RSF 40. So the applicant is proposing so that the entirety of it will be RUD, so that they can facilitate a recombination here. So they're looking to add the 2 parcels that are in blue there, which are also RUD, and add that to the larger tract overall. So everything would be RUD, and the parcel itself would be a little bit larger after the recombination. So staff recommends approval. It's consistent with the comp plan, the future land use map. The RUD district is supported by the rural residential land use map designation, and by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions for staff before we open public hearing? All right, is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? If you'll come forward and give your name and address.
My name is Gordon Heitman. I live at 257 Hidden Hills Drive. I'm not necessarily against the rezoning. I'm just not understanding exactly what the future plans are, the purpose of the rezoning is. What do they plan to do with this property? The road that I particularly live on, there are 2 or 3 homes that are lined up against the edge over here on the left-hand side. I live a little bit further down on that road, but we wanted to know exactly what was planned for that particular piece of property, and now and potentially in the future.
Thank you, sir. I'll be happy to ask some questions of staff when we get out of our public hearing. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Do we have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. I will ask, since this is also my district, Jonathan, can you share whether or not the applicant gave any idea of what their proposed future plans are? And would you be so kind as to explain how this basically goes from an RSF 40 to an RUD, how that basically reduces some of the density that could be allowed currently?
Yes, so there's a small difference in lot size for RUD. The minimum lot size has to be a full acre, and for RSF 40, you could create a new lot of 40,000 square feet minimum. So there's a little bit of a difference there. The applicant, as far as I understand, is looking to add property to this parcel rather than subdivide to make more lots and smaller lots. I have not been provided any information that suggests they're looking to create a subdivision here. They're looking to add those, so one full parcel and then half of another to this overall parcel going to RUD.
So the RUD, as I understand, allows 1 house to 1 acre on average. That's less than what RSF 40 would allow.
Correct.
So this actually makes it a little bit better in terms of density, if you're looking at density.
If that's a concern, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, this does pass first reading. I'll be happy to speak with you if you want to grab my card, and I can answer the questions. Thank you, sir. We do still have, just a reminder, you have to have 2 additional readings after this before there's any finalization, so getting some clarity on that can happen between now and then. We do have, move now to item number 4, rezoning action, hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-46, tax map number 373-0000040, to rezone from RSF 30 to RMX 10, a .81 acre parcel in District 2.
Yes, this property is located on Highway 321, just under an acre there. There are 2 existing homes. It's hard to see the second one under the foliage there in the photograph. But the intent here is to subdivide the parcel so that there is 1 lot for each of the existing homes. So here is the proposed plat. You can see that they're proposing to subdivide, so you got 1 home on each lot. Staff is recommending approval on this application. It is inconsistent with the future land use map. It's designated as a single-family residential area, which calls for slightly larger lots than are typically developed in RMX 10, which would be more appropriate for the neighborhood residential designation. However, the subdivision to follow this rezoning application would eliminate the nonconformity, which would be having 2 homes on 1 parcel. And there are other parcels of a similar size already existing in the area. The 2 homes themselves are already existing, and there's no change to the use or scale of development. And by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Are there any questions for staff before we open up public hearing? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We do not have any old business tonight. We move now to new business. Council to authorize county management and Parks and Recreation Department to seek a qualified consultant to develop a strategic and master plan for the Parks and Recreation Department.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I'd just like to know a little more about it.
Okay. You want to ask some questions, or?
I'm just wondering if, what is the overall, I've heard different things, and I'd just like some clarification on what is the overall purpose of it?
I'd like to ask Catherine Jones to come up, since she's in the audience on behalf of the county, and she can provide us a very solid answer on what they've put together in their request to our committee. Or Mike Moore, I'm sorry. Mike Moore.
Mike, you want-
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. The purpose of the scope is to generate a report and a plan that details some priorities and recommendations for the county going forward. As you all know, we are approximately a year and a half into the new department, Parks and Recreations Department. So management and Parks and Recreation staff believe this is an opportune time to take advantage of that. The scope will develop a purpose statement, mission, values, and goals, and an operational philosophy for the department. It will also conduct a survey along with analysis, focus groups, and background research to determine a number of things, but a lot of it has to do with public opinion on parks and recreation services, what the county offers, what there could be gaps and needs in the future going forward, potential partners, how public opinion aligns with the department, public's willingness to pay fees for program services and facility, as well as operational needs to streamline processes, improve communications, and conduct business. They'll also look at funding options for capital operational needs, considering that there are 2 special recreation tax districts and the rec tax, and then provide recommendations regarding provision of parks and recs programs, facilities, and services for the next 5 to 7 years. So that's what the scope of this is going to accomplish.
I think I'm just gonna tell you what my concern is. My concern is that we've done master plans for Nanny's Worth. We've already done Ebenezer. We're in phase 2 of Ebenezer. We've just finished Allison Creek. And we've got a master plan that's done for the Bethel Lake Valley Park District properties and for Catawba Bend. So what have we, maybe this is how I should have phrased my question to begin with. And I understand some of the public opinion, and, you know, we've heard a lot of that, public opinion, and, you know, on fees and permitting and that kind of thing. But I guess my question is, it's more or less funding is what I mean, I feel like the people would say, you know, we've paid a lot already. And so in addition to the funding question, what is the second part of the goal for it? I mean, I feel like we're kind of behind the 8 ball. That's kind of how I just perceive.
Well, I think in terms of that, the consultant's going to look at what exists today, what our master plans are, and then this is not just parks, it's programs. It's what programs and services do we offer to each of the parks? You know, what's the public opinion? What are things we need to look at to add? So recognizing, of course, we already have master plans, and they're not going to go back and you know, redo the master plans. They're only going to look at what's on paper, what's funded, you know, what may not be, and what should we, you know, prioritize. Obviously, it'll be council's decisions on what to do, but this will be additional information to conduct surveys and get some feedback from the public. So,
What is the cost of hiring this person?
well, we don't know what the ultimate cost of it will be. We'll obviously take the scope and we'll go to the public, what's available. We know it's available in terms of funding in the accounts, so we're going to work to stay under that amount. And so if it goes above that amount, then we will relook at this in the budget process next year. Again, this goes back to what funds we have available now.
So is this is for future budget, costs coming from the future budget or money that we have now before?
This scope will be funded this current budget year.
So
There are
what
funds.
we don't know what that amount is?
We do know.
Oh, what is that? That's what I'm asking. What is that amount?
Okay, so there's approximately $60,000 in one of the accounts that's available for this.
$60,000.
And obviously, if we exceed that, then we're going to have to reprogram it for next year.
I think this is the kind of thing that, I mean, it's hard for me to get an agenda and, you know, and not really know much of this ahead of time. It's hard for me to swallow all of this at one time, and I think if we were ever going to have a workshop, this is something that should have been workshopped. We did have workshops on Nanny's Mountain, and we had workshop on Worth Mountain, and those were things that those 2 communities were not real excited about us moving forward with overall in general. I think that's right, Tommy, for Worth Mountain too. I know that was the case with Nanny's Mountain. And I'm certainly not against parks and rec and green space and what we do with these properties. I'm just saying that in the future, it would be nice if, you know, I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I'd like to have the information. I'd like to walk into this and see new business number one and not have to ask any questions. I'd like to have those details ahead of time.
So, first of all, there were great questions you had in regards to this. You know, when I looked at this, you know, and we had some interesting conversations in regard to this in your committee. You know, and I think out of this, we pull together quite a bit. I think there's a vision that we're going to pull out of this to start off with. The fact that we've got 8 parks, and as we grow, this will, first of all, establish a vision for the county and a vision for our parks. And then once that foundation is built from that vision, we can look holistically what goes on across the county itself, understand where the true value is for our park system. You know, and then, as you mentioned, you start then pulling together the connecting dots, and whether there's an event that are more practical in certain areas, and also where you start looking at connecting paths, whether it's rails to trails type of opportunities, where we connect these parks. I think all that is wrapped into this thing, because we're taking on something big, and in fact that we took on a parks department, I think this is the tip of the spear for us to start launching off to really brand York in the value of the park system that it has. So yeah, I think this would be a real good opportunity for us to bring it to that point. So
I did ask some questions too ahead of time, and I know that there were some vetting and discussions about it. My understanding and the questions that I asked for is that this basically is going to bring us, taking us from operating under silos and basically bringing it under one roof. It really gives us an opportunity to be, as you said, holistic about doing this. And I think planning 5 to 7 years and long-range plans, it's critical. One of the things that I found out as I asked questions was that since this allows us to go from operating in silos to a single master plan, one of the things in there is outdated public information. If we want to be able, and I didn't know this until recently, is that if you want to apply for national or state grants, you have to have up-to-date public information, data that comes from these experts, and you can only get it from these experts. And if it goes stale, then that information can't be used to help go after the grants. And so to me, if we want to be competitive in our grants, if we want to be fair across the board and kind of have a holistic approach to how we fund the infrastructure, that made a lot of sense to me when I asked some questions of Catherine and Mike as we move forward, is that that's something that's necessary to do that. And I wanted to make sure that this is what they believe, that there is funding that exists. This is a one-time expense. It's not a recurring expense. I don't think we need to kick the can down the road in order to come up with some plans. As we saw, even like with our convenience centers, needing to have long-range plans is critically important. And if the funding is there, it's already in the budget, I don't think we need to wait any longer in order to get that input. So while I do understand that some of the questions I've asked enough to make me feel comfortable with this, I support this moving forward. It's a limited scope, and I think we need to support Mike and the Parks Department to move forward with that, to get a better program moving forward.
Okay. I've been part of a rather large community board before where we had, in a different light, a situation like this where we wanted to bring in a consultant. And we had plans to build a new facility that had been talked about. And then the consultant comes in and totally changes everything that we had been talking about. So I think when you're looking at something like this, I hope that we all are aware and know that you could have a consultant to come in and totally not agree with anything that you have had a vision for in your park, in our parks, and things that we have talked about and planned. And being new, I was new to the park system for York County, and I was just really amazed at what has been done to build this area of the county and to be known in the county, in other counties, for our park system. I think we have great plans. I just am concerned about bringing a consultant in that will possibly disrupt a lot of things that have already been done or planning to do, which could cost a lot more money.
Allison, thank you for your input and your questions and your concerns. So I think it's important to note that back on October 16th, when we brought this to council, we followed up and had a meeting on November the 8th. We've had 2 committee meetings actually talking about this subject. And after the first meeting, what happened was staff asked, or we asked staff, and they agreed to go back and put a laundry list of things together that would help them in putting together a 5 to 7 year plan for our parks. And so they went back and worked on that master plan and the list of items that Mike shared with us a few minutes ago. They shared that with us, and we agreed that from a first step perspective, when you look at our park system, Parks Department with Catherine, I think Catherine's been here 2 years now. So they actually went back and put together a list of things they felt like they needed to move forward that would help them create some structure and a master plan, a view, a vision of what could happen with the park system here in York County. Good news is there's money in the budget. It's a lot less money than what's been spent on other master plans, almost half as much as what's been spent on other master plans. And I think that in the event they're able to find the right consultant within the budget amount that they have, hopefully that consultant will take their recommendations, which they, as he's read off, he has a list of things written out that they're asking the consultant to work on. So they actually have an objective to fulfill in this mission to come up with a vision for the Parks Department. So it's been unanimous out of 2 committee meetings, our meetings both. It was unanimous that our committee believed that this was important for our Parks Department, and they're telling us it's important for them because they're creating the ask. We didn't come up with the ask. So I would ask that council support the staff's request to fund a consultant to go out and complete a master plan study that will look out 5 to 7 years. And I think when they bring back the data, it's going to be pretty eye-opening as to what we need to be thinking about as a county as it relates to all of our parks all around the county. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to item number 2 in new business. Council to consider first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 154 Land Development Code to modify Table 154.200-1 grand trees, increasing the minimum size for a tree to be defined as a grand tree to allow fully wooded school, industrial, and commercial developments to fully mitigate grand tree removal through fee in lieu payments, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I've got a motion to approve with the following amendments. First of all, table of grand tree in 154.200A4 shall revert back to the size of the current approved in the existing ordinance. Second, for section 154.200B, amend to add exemption for public K through 12 schools. In the third amendment would be on 154.200E to shall be amend to read as follows. Industrial development on fully wooded sites are exempt from this limitation and may provide full mitigation through fee in lieu payment.
Do we have a second?
Second. I'll second for
A
discussion.
motion and a second. We move now to discussion.
So, first thing on here, some of the biggest concerns that we've heard on this thing is the mitigation component of this. You know, we've got industrial businesses that would be fully willing to pay the cost of the mitigation itself, but it's the time that it takes in order to go through the process. I think, first of all, this will help to speed up the process, to allow them to, you know, mitigate the trees that they can and then pay the rest off in an expedient process, quick, and it's moved forward fast. In regards to the schools, you know, the K through 12, this is concern. You know, you've got taxpayers paying back on fees out of taxpayer wallets. When you force a public school into paying fees back into the county, you're basically telling the taxpayers, we're going to take your money and pay it back to the county. And I feel like, you know, that doesn't make sense to the taxpayer base. And I think that the schools in themselves will, again, move forward in the appropriate manner in order to put in these schools. The third thing, which was the First Amendment I had mentioned, I think keeping the size of the trees that is in the current amendment makes sense at this point. I think changing the size doesn't make sense. I think keeping the size as they are in the existing amendment makes sense. Again, I think it's the mitigation process that we need to address here, and I think this does address it.
Explain the commercial side of, the industrial side of it again.
Commercial and industrial.
So
Well, it'd be
commercial- So you're
industrial.
eliminating commercial, in other words, it would stay the same as far as commercial goes, right?
There would be nothing in there in regards to commercial. Commercial will not be included on it. This would be for industrial. Industrial, so for example, manufacturing. David, do you want to fill in a little bit?
Yeah, just stated another way, the commercial conditions would apply, would remain the same as they are now. So
Correct.
there's no further carve out for commercial.
Correct. This would apply to industrial.
And industrial would be, what would they have to do if they were industrial?
I would think for second reading, we may want to define that a little more precisely. Because there are a lot of different industrial uses in our code that are permitted in, say, the ID district, and you may want to exempt all of those, or allow them to fully mitigate just by writing a check, but you probably need to know what that full list is.
So we could look at that at second,
Yes.
we would hear from y'all on
Yeah,
second reading.
we'd make a recommendation for just what constitutes an industrial building. I think probably large warehouses would also be included in that, because they have less flexibility as to where they can be located. But we would prepare something to define what falls under that industrial
But they're
classification.
able to mitigate. I mean, I'm just gonna use QTS as an example. I mean, you would look at that and think they're gonna need to come and clear cut everything and start with a blank canvas. But they've said they have no issues with the tree ordinance. And
Yeah,
so,
I think we provide a lot of different options, but when you have those very large buildings, they can't necessarily be built around grand trees. They just have to have some options for how to mitigate this. And what's being proposed by the current ordinance allows them to, if they do not have an opportunity to mitigate on the site by planting trees or saving additional trees, then they could pay into a fund. So it really just depends on the individual development, but this would give them the opportunity to write a check to the York County Tree Fund, so those trees could be planted somewhere else.
Okay.
But it gives them a little more flexibility in doing so.
Mhm. Yeah, it will the goal is to speed up the mitigation process, and I think this would.
Any other discussion?
It's probably important to note this, because I've, like the rest of you, have spent a little bit of time reading and asking questions about this issue. But when you think about commercial, and I guess even the school districts, I'm for one, before I joined county council, I said, why do we allow clear cutting, and why do all these great trees go down? And unfortunately, two things I've learned. Number one is, when you go in and you start moving equipment around, and you're putting parking lots down and everything you have to do with the infrastructure of a piece of property, you're disturbing the roots of those trees. So a lot of those trees are gonna be damaged and lost as a result of the activity on the property, which I never really thought about that. So you have to take that into consideration. And then very recently, in the insurance industry, insurance companies actually are looking now, if you're looking to buy a piece of property, it's probably a good idea that you get the insurance company that's gonna insure the property, to inspect the property, at least from an aerial view, whether it's residential or commercial, because there could be things going on that property that would prevent them from insuring the property. So these older trees are more likely to fall versus a younger tree. So there are issues that occur, especially in the industrial and the schools. I guess, commercial could be treated differently, as it's been suggested, but there is a reason why you don't leave so many of the trees, because they do get damaged, and eventually they're gonna come down. And if they're close enough to a building, so an improvement on the property, in the future, it's gonna be very difficult for insurance companies to insure those properties.
I think it's important for the public to understand that with this modification, there will be no change in tree size to a larger tree. So we're going to keep the existing size as it is currently been approved under, as it is right now. So
Let me ask a
no
question
change
on
to
that, if you don't mind. So are you suggesting that the loblolly and the shortleaf pine remain?
The motion
Your
currently the motion currently on the table is to retain the existing, for first reading, to retain the existing tree diameters and not change that. It was geared towards looking at mitigation, recognizing that we support preservation efforts. But that is the motion that's currently on the table if you're looking for clarification on that piece of it.
Yeah, as I ride through the county, I look at properties that have preserved trees. I mean, Lake Wiley's a good example, right on 274. You got a line of pine trees those are the only trees that exist that separate the property from 274, and it looks awful. Because there are no limbs, there are no leaves, you just got, sticks there. I don't know, Tommy, you weighed in on this topic at our workshop. You made a lot of sense. I'm curious, interested in what you're thinking.
Well, I certainly don't think that pine trees need to be on, but my main reason is pine trees are handled, they're an industry. Some may think that they're farming, but they're actually an industry, a pulp industry. And those trees were brought here. They wasn't natural too. Most of the wood in the U.S. comes out of Canada, and it's white pine. Pine trees need a lot of care because they get the beetles. And that can be an issue. But at the same time, if you move in on a tract of pines that is full, they have to periodically thin them to keep maintained. California's finding out what happens when you don't take care of forest with the fires and all. I personally would, like to see that pine trees not be on there, but I'm at a dilemma on it because you got a lot of these lots are just pine. They ain't hardwood. But on the same hand, and y'all know how I feel about tract builders and all that. But if they're going to be able to go out here and take all our good open farmland and farmers are losing it, whether they can't afford to compete and buy it, but they may have it rented, So I personally wouldn't ever consider a pine tree being on it. Because I know pine trees and different various wood, because I run my own sawmills. But there's other stuff I don't agree with either, but I think liabilities and whatnot. But the biggest thing is unkept pines not took care of get the beetles. And the next thing you have is rot, and the next thing you have is they come crashing down. They're not a hardy. They're for the pulp industry, about most all the pines.
I just want to note that the pine trees that were saved behind those apartments were not saved because they were grand trees. That was a developer's choice. And they're the only trees there. They are, everything else was removed. So, and with that intersection right there where you're talking about, it's highly likely that those trees will actually save one of those apartments
Oh, that's a good
before
point.
it's over and said and done, because that's the only thing they have, and that is a very dangerous intersection in District 2.
It just doesn't provide much aesthetic quality. That's my point.
Well,
I agree.
I don't know about saving no apartment, because a lot of your pine trees, if they make the grade, that's what your telephone poles are. And I've seen many a car hit telephone poles and shear them slap off.
So I guess the question I was asking is, you proposed a list of sizes, and now
Yes.
what we're about to vote on is keeping it the same.
Well,
Yeah,
those sizes were actually proposed back in 2022 when we passed that. So that was we're back to the first group that was actually proposed and voted on by committee.
Okay?
But that,
I think this is, let me remind council, this is first reading. I think the motion on the table is one that I think gives us some of the compromise that I heard council share. If there are changes to that need to be fleshed out, and there still needs to be some additional discussion from management at the next 2 readings, I'll support the motion the way that it's stated. I think that it gives the schools and industrial sites, which are inherently different than other properties because they require larger buildings, larger building footprints, open spaces for track and field, stadiums, parking, and bus lots. So I think that what this does, and since the schools are absolutely necessary, you can't get around having those, providing some flexibility and some exemption for our schools so that it doesn't add to the cost of the building is worth looking into, which is what this
Most
does.
definitely.
And also gives some flexibility to the industrial sites, not to skirt the responsibility of the tree save, but to have a little bit more predictability, take the guesswork out, let it not be as speculative from the outset so that they can understand and evaluate the cost, which ends up helping us too, because we need the tax base from the industrial to help the residential folks. And if those costs drive up, they pass it along to us anyway. And so I think the motion, at least for my comments, I'll say I support the motion as stated. And if there are additional considerations that need to be thought through at second and third reading, we certainly can do that. Are there any more comments on the current motion that's on the table?
yeah, sort of partially to what you asked, Watts. I think the mitigation side of it is really the most important issue, because it doesn't make sense to make the taxpayer pay for tax-funded things.
Especially for schools, yeah.
Right. I don't want to live in a clear-cut county. The whole dilemma, and I won't get into it, but the problem is way bigger than just what we're discussing here. But I just know that pine trees can be a problem as much as they can be a solution to certain things. But I've just seen the devastation of when beetles get in them, and you know, all of you know, a lot of the timber companies that own timberland, a lot of those have been sold off. Same thing, housing developments went on. I mean, we got some big issues as far as not just York County, but the entire South. I mean, but mainly if we can get the mitigation part of it,
All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to item number 3, a new business. Council to consider first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 155 zoning code to modify the minimum separation between tattoo and body piercing establishments and other uses in districts, to provide for a public hearing and to provide for other matters relating thereto. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Huckabee?
So, from what I read, the state of South Carolina suggests 1,000 feet separation from one tattoo or body piercing establishment to another unless it's clustered or adjacent. We're suggesting 300 feet. So there's a couple of things. We've got the 200-foot provision from a residential lot line to the lot line of a tattooed or piercing. So that's about what we're getting ready to vote on from what I read. So we're going to agree that 200 feet is enough. And then the other piece is 300 feet until the next one. So I sent all of you a text. I think 1,000 feet makes sense. That's what the state recommends. You're just basically saying that you might have 2 or 3 clustered together, but if there's not another one, it's going to be 1,000 feet apart. And personally, I think that makes sense. That's enough distance. When we talk about, I hate to mention roads, but I will. We talk about Cherry Road, we talk about Highway 49, we talk about other roads here in the county and other areas around us. I think if you had 1,000-foot provision and you just kind of stretched it out, you still have obviously roughly 5 in a mile. So I just suggest that you consider 1,000 feet.
Well, we just had extensive discussions on this in the P&Z committee meetings, and it was discussed and multiple times, and this was our recommendation.
I support the recommendation. I'm just suggesting you stretch it out 700 more feet from the 3 to 1,000, as the state suggests.
Is there any other discussion or comment?
Well, we're still, this first reading, and this was kind of Bump's initiative, so I think if we pass it tonight and then find out.
I spoke to him, but I'm good with that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm stuck on the 1,000 feet. I just think it makes sense. I think it makes sense throughout the county on a number of establishments. The more I'm
Well,
getting.
I don't disagree with you on a chunk of that.
All right, so
When we talk about development and how we're trying to control and impact development, this is a suggestion in doing that, but maybe that doesn't set well with you.
all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Committee and other reports, Finance and Operations Committee, Chairwoman Allison Love.
Okay, so, Finance and Operations Committee met this evening before our council meeting. Present were council members Audette and Atkins. And we approved the minutes from the December 18th, 2023 committee meeting. Made the recommendation for the Bethel Lake Wiley Land Acquisition and Preservation Park District Board, Patrick Carmody for a first term and Deborah Thomas for a first term. Bethel Fire Tax District Board, we recommended Charles Parmenter for to fill an unexpired term. And the Newport Fire Tax District Board, we recommended Ronald Garrison for a first term. We had a very brief meeting tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. We do not have any citizen concerns tonight. Do we have any council member new non-agenda comments?
I would just like to say we are off and running in 2024. Looking forward to a great year on county council and a great year working with all the great people in York County. So here we go.
Happy New Year. Go ahead, Mr. Atkins.
I just hope everybody had a good Christmas and a good New Year, and hold on for 24.
I do have one thing. I noticed that there were some issues with the convenience center, some questions that the public asked. I know that we have a solid waste management plan that needs updating, or that I would at least ask that staff management either put together a memo to council or present something to us to see whether or not, is that something that we need to revisit? It's one of the most critical, important things that we need to do, solid waste removal, and it's never an easy thing. So I would just ask that we follow up on that and make sure that we're getting ahead of the curve on that and answering the questions that were raised. At this time, do we have a motion for executive session?
Yes, we do have one. Receipt of legal advice, contractual matter, project Mountie zoning.
Do we have a
Second.
motion and a second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move straight into executive session. We are out of executive session. No action was taken. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.